At the turn of the 20th century, a new industry was born that would forever change American culture. This was the motion picture industry. Theaters sprang up all across the country to entertain audiences with Hollywood's latest attractions. Shelbyville was no exception. In 1906, the Crystal Theater, located in the southeast corner of the square, opened its doors as the first movie theater in town. Operated by M. Swito & Son, the facility served as a restaurant and confectionery business during the day, and then, folding up the chairs and tables in the evening, it would be transformed into a theater, and patrons would fork over 5 cents to watch the movies. Not long after this, 3 movie houses opened up: the Koza, the Lyric, and the Niccolo. In 1911, the Alhambra Theater was opened by Shelbyville native Frank Rembush, who would go on to be an important national figure in the movie theater business. This 500-seat theater, located at the northwest corner of Harrison and Broadway, was the first theater built in the country for the purpose of displaying motion pictures. The others were all converted vaudeville houses. At this time, Shelbyville, with a population of just 9,500 people, had 5 theaters operating simultaneously. However, on March 4, 1916, things would change. Local building contractor William Malloy would open the largest and grandest theater of all in Shelbyville, the Strand Theater. And so, here we are now celebrating the Strand's first 100 years of entertaining our community. The Strand is actually a combination of old and new buildings. The west end of the theater, which houses the stage, screen, and mechanical equipment, was actually a livery stable that dates back to the mid-1800s. The top floor of the building was the lodge hall of the Independent Order of Oddfellows. The original hardwood floors and woodwork still exist today, along with a stained glass window. The theater was the first steel-constructed building in Shelbyville and cost $40,000 to build, the equivalent of about $1 million today, and seated 850 patrons. While no photographs exist of the theater at its opening, the Shelbyville Democrat described it as follows: "The best of modern upholstered opera chairs have been provided, and the seating capacity is above 800. Hollis Mileson, a Shelbyville artist, had charge of the mural decorations, the scheme being blue panels with flowers and leaf borders, all hand-painted in oil, and the effect is highly pleasing. The stage is draped with velvet curtains at the sides. The ceiling of the theater is metal. The interior of the house is lighted by 18 large ceiling lights, 8 side lights, and 9 floor lights. It can be noted that the metal ceiling and the floor lights still exist in the theater today." The paper went on to describe the facade and musical instrumentation. The exterior lighting consists of lights around each of the 3 windows on the second floor and 2 electric signs displaying the name Strand, beside 2 fountains in which green bulbs are used with pleasing effect. 617 lights are utilized in this exterior lighting system, with 20 miles of electrical wiring used throughout the building. No theater in the land is better equipped with reference to musical features than the Strand. $5,000 was spent on the Wick Brothers pipe organ. The organ is located at the side of the stage in the west end of the theater. The keyboard is situated in the center of the house in front of the stage. Miss Kate Davis Raymond has been hired as the organist. Theater pipe organs were an important development in the early theaters. Since the movies were silent, live music was needed to accompany the film. Paying an orchestra for several showings each and every day could be quite expensive. Theater pipe organs allowed for just one person to play a variety of instruments, thus lowering the overhead. The March 4th opening was a grand affair with a packed house. The first movie shown at the Strand was Let Katie Do It, which was a Triangle Plays production. Admission was just 10 cents for adults and a nickel for children. Moviegoing in the early days was much different than today, with most movies being shorter in length. Films would often only be offered for a 2 or 3 day run. In those days, there was little competition for the entertainment dollar, so theaters could change the movies out a few times each week to keep audiences coming back. In addition to the usual double feature, there was also films showing the topics of the day, world and national news, and other short films. The Strand was more than just a movie house, though. It boasted its very own Strand Orchestra that would entertain audiences from time to time, either in conjunction with a movie or as an event itself. Vaudeville acts and opera singers would also perform here at the Strand. The mid to late 20s saw big upgrades to the theater. In 1925, the theater was renovated in order to install the new Marr Colton pipe organ. This organ had 2,800 pipes and 45 stops. The new organist hired by the Strand was Fred Karch, who had previously played all across the country, including the Circle and Apollo theaters in Indianapolis. On September 8, 1926, a beautifully decorated hall was added to the theater. The Alcazar Ballroom was located on the second floor of the building to the south of the Strand in what was the Masonic Lodge. You would enter the hall from the doorway at the top of the south stairs, which still exists today. It was decorated with Spanish effects similar to those used in the recent redecorating of the theater. Dances were conducted each night except Sunday. Admission was 35 cents. Persons purchasing a 25-cent balcony ticket for the movie could secure a dance for an additional 10 cents. The opening night dance featured the Rhythmats, a Columbia recording orchestra. The biggest change, though, came on November the 16th, 1928. On this date, Shelbyville became the first city of its size in the entire United States to have the opportunity of seeing and hearing motion pictures, or talkies as they were called at the time, thanks to the installation of the new Vitaphone and Movietone equipment. Demand for sound equipment was so great at the time of its installation that orders were backed up until September of the following year. The Strand received offers from all across the country for the rights to its early installation date. This was such a revolution at the time that the Shelbyville Republican issued a special Vitaphone issue of its newspaper. The entire paper was dedicated to telling the various aspects of the new technology and offering special Vitaphone advertising. The first talkie shown was State Street Sadie, and the second feature was The Jazz Singer, starring Al Jolson. As the 1920s came to a close, the Depression set in across America. Millions of people were out of work. Times were tough. This, however, was the dawn of Hollywood's golden age. Throughout the 1930s, Hollywood put out some of its greatest movies ever, perhaps in response to Americans seeking a little respite from their daily woes. They could escape their troubles for just a little while at the movies. The Strand was able to bring those great films to the community. No sooner was the Great Depression over than World War II began. Again, the citizens of Shelbyville would flock to the Strand to see the newsreels that would bring the latest news from the front lines. There were also an abundance of patriotic movies to lift the American spirits. In the 1950s, things began to change, the first of which was television. The TV was now bringing free entertainment directly into the living room of nearly every American household. The other competitor was a very popular variation of the movie theater, the drive-in theater. During the 1950s, America became an automobile culture. Cruising around was a thing to do for the young people. Seeing a movie in your car was just a natural extension of that. Shelby County had 3 drive-in theaters, the Shelby, the Skyline, and the Moonlight. All of this competition meant some traditional theaters would not survive. The Alhambra and the Ritz, which had opened in 1939, would close their doors. The Strand, however, managed to keep afloat and survive. In April 1967, the theater closed for several months and went through a major renovation. The arcade-type entrance and outside ticket booth were replaced, and the vertical sign was removed. The front entry took on the look that you see today with the 2 double doors. The name was also changed to the Cinema. It reopened on October the 11th with the showing of The Sound of Music. Price of admission was now $1.50 for adults and 75 cents for children. On May 22, 1973, ownership changed again. Elmer and Jean DeWitt purchased the Cinema and the Shelby Drive-In. The entire DeWitt family was involved in operating the theater for the next 31 years. Over the years, they added 2 additional screens within the auditorium to meet the demands of the studios. In 2004, new competition put a strain on the theater. A new multiplex theater opened its doors, offering 10 screens and modern amenities. The DeWitts closed the theater in May and sold it to Main Street, Shelbyville, in August of that year. Main Street operated the theater for 2 years, occasionally showing classic films during this time while seeking a group to transition the building to. In October of 2006, Steve Frazee, David Finkel, and Chris Nolly formed the nonprofit corporation Strand Theater of Shelbyville, Incorporated. This group assumed ownership of the building and returned it to its original name. The group then set out to execute their plan for turning the movie theater into a performing arts center. Over the course of the next several months, extensive planning took place, and beginning in April of 2007, work began in earnest. Over the next 9 months, a crew of entirely community volunteers worked diligently on the renovations. Finally, on January 17th, 2008, the Strand roared back to life. Local community theater group, the Shelby County Players, reprised their recent production of Nonsense. Though the group had performed this show just 4 months prior at their own theater, the Strand performances sold out completely. A sold-out show was now 370 patrons, a big difference from the 850 seats at the time when the building opened. This was due to the removal of the first few rows of seats to accommodate an extension to the stage, as well as the removal of seats underneath the balcony to make room for a cabaret area. The Strand was reopened with these core values: quality of life, community self-esteem, economic vitality, and artistic freedom. Since then, it has lived up to those standards. A whole new world of entertainment is now opened up to the people of this community. Events were created that would not have existed without this revitalization. These events were born purely because the Strand existed and have become great traditions. Events such as Raphoria, Shelby Idol, Mr. Shelbyville, and Divas, to name just a few. Many young performers got their first opportunity to perform in front of a live audience on the Strand stage. The Strand gave them a chance to learn and grow as performers, and some have gone on to experience great success that is rooted in their Strand experience. Two of these core values mentioned are fulfilled by these types of performances: community self-esteem and artistic freedom. The Strand has also been able to attract top-quality national talent to this community. Previously, one would have to travel to Indianapolis at a much greater expense to witness such performers, oftentimes not in such an intimate venue as the Strand. Professional comedians with television and movie credits to their names began performing here. Names such as Gilbert Gottfried, Caroline Rhea, Jimmy Pardo, and Bob Zaney. Other types of shows came to town too. Emmett Cahill, an Irish tenor from the worldwide touring company Celtic Thunder, regionally known groups doing bluegrass and cabaret, and the musical production The Color Purple. The core values of quality of life and economic vitality are satisfied by these types of performances. While there have been numerous changes through the years, including new seats, new heating and cooling system, restrooms, and digital video, to name a few, some things remain the same. The tin ceiling above you, the lights down the center aisle, the stage, the back brick wall, they are all original. Imagine being 100 years old. Shelbyville has a performing arts center to be proud of and has stood the test of time. We look forward to our next 100 years.